Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa an kafatil mu'mineen. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay. Inshallah, we're all ready to go. Just a reminder. Can everyone hear me back there as well? Everyone in the back? Okay. Just as a reminder, inshallah, to always come to class with your intentions. So make your intentions to hold fast to the Book of Allah and to practice what you learn to the best of your ability. And inshallah, Allah Ta'ala will give you success. I thank all of you for especially those of you that have given me your condolences. When your teacher dies, especially when you spent 9 years drinking from a particular fountain, when that fountain is no longer with you, it's as if a part of you has been taken. And you're reminded of how short this life is and how precious ilm is, how precious knowledge is. And I'll be honest with you, this morning I had, my wife can tell you, I had no desire whatsoever to teach. I didn't have the strength actually to do it. But we remember the legacy of our teachers, and if we were to not teach, then what are we doing? And so I never forgot that the first year in 2004, when I first met Sheikh Amin and started studying, actually one of the first subjects I studied with him was Tafsir, one of the first. And I remember that his nephew had passed away, had died in the city of Ankara, and we were in Istanbul. And I said, why don't you go to his janazah? His janazah was later on in the day. There was enough time to go from Istanbul to Ankara by plane for sure. I said, why don't you attend his janazah and we can have our dars later, our lesson later. And he said, Allah Ta'ala has already taken his soul, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has brought you all the way from America to Istanbul. So you don't leave what's greater for something lesser. And, you have a right, and right now I will stay with you. So that has always touched me. And for that reason, I have always tried my best to always make a dars if I can. I used to tell students in Atlanta that if I don't tell you I'm canceling class, you don't hear from me, and I just don't show up to class, send the police out. Honestly, send the police. Go look for me because something's wrong. And I meant it. So this high level of respect for the lesson, for the dars, because of the stakes that are here, is part of what's transmitted from our teachers to us. Anyway, may Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala continue to allow them to provide us nur and guidance even in their absence. Suratal Alaq. We have a volunteer to read? First 5 verses. Everybody now is thinking they should have taken those tajweed classes. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. As we know, this was the first revelation of the Quran to the Prophet ﷺ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins with Iqra, read. Iqra has two meanings. One is to read, the other is to recite or to repeat after. So if I tell you, for example, Iqra, and then I say something and then you repeat it. Right? So if I tell you, okay, everybody repeat after me, Iqra, and then everybody say Iqra. But if I just tell you Iqra and then I say something, then that means repeat after me. It could also mean Iqra, kitabat, read that page for me. Read out loud. Both are meant, right? Which is why the Prophet ﷺ responded with, I don't know how to read. Right? He was thinking read, as in literacy on a piece of paper, and he wasn't taught to read. And then after the third embrace by Jibreel, he understood that Iqra meant repeat after. And that's why he realized, he means repeat. And then that's why he said, what shall I repeat? What shall I read? Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the bi-ismi rabbika, in the ism of your Rabb. Now this is very important because the first introduction, or the introduction means first, the introduction that the Prophet ﷺ gets about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rabbika. The verse did not say read or recite in the name of Allah. It's very interesting. It's Iqra bismi rabbik, in the name of your Rabb, your Lord. Why? Because Rabb here is from the word tarbiyah. Your Rabb, i.e. your educator. Okay? Rabb does mean Lord in our English sense of Lord, yes. But the context here is education. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ had not been through any formal educational process. And his first reaction to the demand of reading was that I'm not educated. Ma ana biqariyan. I have not received any formal educational instruction. I haven't been privileged like that. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, read in the name of your Rabb. Yes, your Lord, but more importantly, the one that gives you tarbiyah. Tarbiyah is spiritual education. You didn't know how to read, so you're going to school now. Read in the ism of your Rabb. Alladhi khalaq. The first attribute of Allah that's introduced to the Prophet ﷺ is khalaq, the khaliq, the attribute of the one that created you. So your Rabb, your educator, is the one that forms you and fashions you, and in a sense molds you and proverbially creates you, right? In quotation marks. In the name of your Lord that created you in reality, in your jasad, in your body, created your ruh, and now that you're here, he's going to create you again as a prophet. Give you education that's going to reformulate your soul. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ. Not just you, but all of the insan. Now here the Prophet ﷺ is not introduced, obviously, to any categories of human beings as categories such as believers, disbelievers, people on the right, people on the left, fasiqun, kafirun. No, this is not important right now. We start with, in the educational process, we start with grand universal terms, and then we go into particulars. So the introduction is that this is your Rabb who created the insan. Min alaq, from a clot of blood. Alaq means a clot of blood, but it also means something that clings or sticks to something, which also resonates with education, because the true teacher, the true student sticks with their teacher. And it is through that sticking, that attachment, through the alaq's attachment to the womb, that it begins to grow and develop into a piece of flesh, and then a fetus, and etc. It is through the sohbat, it is through the accompaniment with your teacher, the presence of being with your teacher, the mindset that you are always with your teacher, which later on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces the Prophet to the fact that he's always with him. And the Prophet ﷺ introduces that concept to Abu Bakr. Later on, Ya Abu Bakr, la takhaf, don't worry, inna Allah ma'ana, Allah Ta'ala is with you. The idea of being with your teacher, that even if your teacher is dead, you're still with your teacher. Your teacher is still with you. Why? Because the education, the information, the ilm that is transmitted to you comes from your teacher. That never leaves you. Right. And thus your teacher is with you. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ, the one who created the insan from this clinging element which causes the human being to cling to things. Right. Later on. اقرأ وَرَبُّكَ الْأَكْرَمُ. The second attribute is introduced. Read or recite, and your Lord is Al-Akram. Now this is very important. Later on we'll see. Akram is the most generous, not generous, the most generous. The one who excels at generosity far beyond the capability of anyone else who might call themselves Kareem. So Akram comes from the word Kareem to mean generous. Kareem also is a word for zawj, for husband, interestingly enough. In the Arabic language, the word for husband is zawj, but also the word zawj is in classical Arabic, the word zawj is gender neutral, actually. Right? So if you use the word zawj, it can refer to husband and wife. You don't need the word zawja. The term marabuta and zawja came much later in Arabic. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was zawj. In the Quran, uskun anta wa zawjuka al-jannah. Allah Ta'ala says about Adam, He says, uskun anta, you live here, wa zawjuka al-jannah, and your zawj. Both you and your zawj, Adam, not your zawja. So one of the words for spouse or for husband, for zawj, is actually kareem. You could do a write-up on what the meaning of that's supposed to be. The kareem is the zawj. Your daughter, a daughter is actually called, obviously bint in Arabic language, but daughter is also called kareemah in Arabic. Very interesting. So kareem means zawj, it also means the one that's generous. Kareemah means daughter in Old Arabic, maybe not in modern Arabic. So, but the one who is akram, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet is introduced to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through these two sifats. The sifat of the Creator and the sifat of Al-Akram. The Akram, well, let's understand that deeper. الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ. The one who has not just created you, not just created the human being, but educated you with the pen. And the pen is one of the magnificent signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because later on in the Quran, Allah ta'ala will swear by the pen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, when He swears by something, He intends that this thing is magnificent and great. So here He's not swearing by it, but later He will swear by it. The idea of writing something down, of khat, of penmanship and handwriting, is very important, because in a different part of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us that words or speech or kalam is actually wahi, is revelation. And actually, the first revelation to be given to Adam was kalam, was speech. This is in the suratal Baqarah, where Allah ta'ala says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam the names of all things. This means that He taught him language. Language was the first wahi, the first revelation. And the only way, one of the ways to secure that, to remember that, to document that, to put that down for posterity, was the introduction of the qalam, the pen. And the pen is important because the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are meant to be remembered. Not just remembered, they're meant to be passed on from generation to generation. And they're meant to be preserved. And the qalam is an instrument of preservation and transmission. So He's the one who teaches by the pen, because this education that He's offering is supposed to be transmitted and it's supposed to be preserved. So you are learning something, O Prophet, that is not disposable knowledge. It is not knowledge that people should throw away. It is sacred knowledge, and something that is sacred has to be preserved, protected, guarded, and transmitted in a dignified fashion, and thus He creates the qalam. He educates with the qalam. Also in this verse, in the second verse, the idea, or in this verse, ilm is introduced. So we have the introduction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Khaliq. We have the introduction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Al-Akram. Now we have the introduction of what is it that is supposed to be preserved, what is it that is supposed to be passed on and protected? Ilm. Ilm, allama, right? Allama al-insan. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala imparts ilm. Now we have to think about that because we are people that are in the modern times, and in the modern times, ilm is now in not contradiction, but it's in competition with something that's called information. Ilm is not information. Okay? You have ilm, and the person who has this ilm, who follows this ilm, who practices this ilm, who studies this ilm, is called an alim, and a group of them together, be they male or female, are called ulama. But then the person who learns something that's not ilm, they learn disposable knowledge, or temporary knowledge, or knowledge is not beneficial, that's called information, and that person is not called an alim. That person is called an aqil, an intellectual. And so now what's been introduced is that the Prophet ﷺ is being told that what you are learning is this, you've been introduced into the structure of ilm. And society around you is a society that should have been given ilm, has been given ilm, lost it, and it's been replaced with just information. Okay? Later we'll see that more clearly. Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. He educates the human being ma lam ya'lam. This ma in the verse is a very interesting ma. Because this ma lam ya'lam could be translated in a couple ways. First of all, I'm glad everybody I've asked all of you to bring Qur'ans to class, particularly translations as well. And most of you have done that, alhamdulillah, thank you. So, just really quickly before I translate this, call out some of the translations, the names of the translations you have. Yusuf Ali. Who else? No, just the name of the translator. You're not sure? Google, right? Sheikh Google. Khan? Huh? What? Abdul Halim. Yes. Abdul Halim. I really like it. Yes. Taqi Usmani. Shakir. Good. Anybody else? Asad. Good. Anybody else? Yes. Khan. Muhyiddin Khan. Okay. What does Muhyiddin Khan say about this verse? Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. He taught the human being. How does he translate it? Sister?
He has taught man that which he knew not.
That which he knew not. What about Abdul Halim? Abdul Halim. He has taught man what he did not know. What about Asad? Where are the lions in here? Asad. We heard Asad. Who's got Asad? Muhammad Asad.
Muhammad Asad's translation's too big to carry around.
Carry around with you. By scrolling through the. What about Yusuf Ali? Okay, interesting. Very good. Allama al-insana, he taught the human being ma lam ya'lam. You could translate it as that which he didn't know, which is correct. And in that case, it means something specific. Right? So you didn't know how to drive. You just learned how to drive, or you went through a driving course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught you that. You didn't know how to, do open heart surgery. You went to school, you got that education, Allah ta'ala taught you that particular skill set. Right? So in that case, it's talking about one particular type of ilm. He taught the human being ma lam ya'lam, that thing that he or she didn't know. The other way to read it is allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. He taught the human being every single thing. That ma here is a very general encompassing ma. He taught the human being everything that he used to not know. Every single thing that has been learned by the human being, the grand educator in that affair was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your mom taught you how to walk. No, she didn't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught you how to walk. You learned how to write. No, your teacher didn't teach you that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught you that. This is a radical transformation in understanding who is the real doer behind everything. O Prophet, allama, he's the one who instructed you, educated you, took care of you, provided for you, was generous to you in every single thing that you had experienced in the past. And not just you, it applies to every single person who considers themselves an insan. Radical transformation in terms of who the doer is behind everything. The theory here is whatever you learn, you have to practice. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the real doer and educator behind everything you learn, then who's the real doer behind everything you do? It's just logic, right? If he's the one that is the doer, in terms, the real teacher in terms of everything you know, then when you do something, who's the real doer? Allah, right? This is echoed in a different verse of the Quran where Allah Ta'ala talks about the archers and says, you didn't throw that, you didn't cast that arrow when you cast it. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cast the arrow. You didn't do, you thought you did this, but this wasn't the work of Allah. What does this mean in terms of the way we are reformed, in terms of how we see our interaction, in terms of what people do to us and how they treat us? Should we see them as the sole entity in terms of sole control over their actions? Maybe Allah Ta'ala wanted us to experience that thing to put us in a position to test us, etc. Radical revolution in terms of insight, in terms of understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is imparting to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. And then the revelation stops. That's enough. That's lesson 1. That's dars 1. First lesson for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he leaves. Revolutionary information. Kalla. Later on, kalla comes. Kalla is used particularly in the Meccan sense mostly. When kalla appears, it means that something before it is being denied, is being disagreed with. So, allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam, he's the one that really taught the human being everything he knew, kalla. But no. That's not the way the human being sees it. That's what that means. Kalla denies what came before it, not in reality, but in the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala taught you what you knew, kalla. But it's as if that wasn't the case. Innal insana la yatgha. Despite that education, that experience of being educated by Allah, the human being is la yatgha, is ever transgressant. Okay. This is another term. Yes.
There's sisters, I think, that are. I just would like to pause just to.
I'm sorry. Please, sisters. Let's. If sisters could, please let them in. Don't ever be shy about coming in. If sisters that are already seated, if you guys could come forward, please. Don't be shy about space. You know the hadith that if you make space for your sister or brother in the halaqah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make room for you in Jannah. Right? Now everybody's moving after hearing that. Yeah. Make space. Please don't leave anybody out. Same thing with the brothers, inshallah. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, brothers always seem to be 2, 3 brothers and sisters lining up outside Washington Square Park. If the brothers want to move this way to make space for sisters, brothers can, we have to radically change our formation. Inshallah, we have more brothers come forward. I don't really bite so much. Come forward, inshallah. Sisters, if you need to, you can, move that back, move it. Yeah, exactly. Very good. You can move it if you want. If you want to keep it, keep it. If you want to move it, Sandy. Kalla. That's not the case. In translations, you get the word nay. You get all kinds of English other words. Kalla has a function. It means whatever's before it, it's being, I don't want to say contradicted, but in a sense, Allah Ta'ala is introducing a contradiction. So he taught the human being what everything he knew, but in reality, it doesn't seem to be the case. Or it's as if it's not the case. Why? Innal insana la yatqa, because this human being constantly transgress. Now this is the other term that we have to understand. This is another concept you should write down and know it very, very well. I wish I had a scribe. I wish I had a katib, a scribe in this class. Sometimes I need to write things down. Anyway, tughyan is the word, tughyan. You can write down this word, yatqa. Those that know a little Arabic, comes from the word tughyan. Transgressant in English. Transgressant. Transgressant. Tughyan, yeah, with a ta, looks like a shoe. Ghain, ya, alif, noon, tughyan. You can just write down the word in the verse, yatqa. This is a very, very, very important word. You can just yatqa, just the way the word is in the ayah. See, this is the main, the main beef that Allah Ta'ala has with the human being. This business of tughyan, this business of transgressant, being transgressant. It's the same attribute that Allah Ta'ala charges Fir'aun with, being a transgressor, a tyrant. So the tagha means that there's a limit, there's a boundary, and you just step right over the boundary. You don't care. You just go right over the, go right over the fence. Yes.
Sorry, I have a question on that. So when you say that it's contradicting what's being said before, is it the last line or the fact that Allah is the doer?
No, it's the last line.
Okay.
Yeah. So Allah Ta'ala taught the human being everything that he has learned. But in spite of that, still the human being transgresses. Innal insana la yatgha. Yes.
So when you say Allah taught the human being everything, how about things that aren't beneficial or that aren't good for you? Like how do you reconcile?
I mean, like
when you learn how to steal or something that was bad.
It's
like
well, it's still in the realm ultimately that you were given that information. You were exposed to that information, not ilm. You're exposed to that information, that act, in the context of somebody, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that somebody still. And He created the act also. The act of stealing is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He creates the acts, even bad acts. They're all created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but He does not approve of the act. And He does not command for the act. As a matter of fact, He commands against the act and commands for the punishment of the act. So for example, He creates pork, but then He commands us not to eat pork. So He creates the act of lying, but then commands against it. Why does He create things that He commands against? As a test, because this world is a test. So it's still under the overall universal grand concept, grand theme of education by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything. That's what we're talking about. But you're right, when it comes to vices and bad traits, out of adab and etiquette, we never assigned Allah Ta'ala as the doer of that thing. Out of etiquette, we assign responsibility to the person, which is why Islam, where the entire justice system comes in. But the point is, for the person, what the Quranic way is doing is that it's taking the Prophet ﷺ and it's telling him, listen, from now on, when you see people doing things, when you experience bad things from people, and when you're put in a situation where people are going to oppress you, they're going to harm you, they're going to test you in certain circumstances, understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over them. That's the point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over them. Okay? Innal insana la yatgha. Now this is a feature in the Quran where anytime you see a verse that starts with inna, and then one or two words later, you see the lam that comes. Look at this verse here. Inna, kalla inna. There's the inna. Al-insana, and then after the word insan, la yatgha. You see that lam that's there? That lam with fatha? That's a combination there. Inna and la. Whenever you see those two together like that, it means that Allah Ta'ala is saying, I swear 100%. This is the grand way to swear, or the grand way to tell the truth and to produce a sentence with 100% certainty in the Arabic language. For example, if you want to say, if I tell you in Arabic that Ahmed came in, right? And I just say Ahmed came in. Dakhala Ahmed. Ahmed arrived. Ahmed came in. Then in Arabic language, it has the ability, what it's saying is, well, he came in, but there's an element of doubt. Right? You're allowed to doubt it. Intellectually, you're allowed to say, prove to me Ahmed came in. Intellectually. If I say in Arabic, Inna, who's the guy? Ahmed? Okay. Inna Ahmed la yadkhul. Indeed, I put inna in now. Okay? Indeed, Ahmed came in. So now, the level of certainty and truth, I just raised it. How did I do that? With just inna. So now you can still doubt it, but you can't doubt it in the same way you could doubt the previous sentence that did not have inna. Okay? So you could still doubt it though. Inna means indeed, certain, for really he came. If I can take it up a little bit higher, yes. Six in Surah Alaq. Kalla inna al-insana la yatgha. You see it? Samira, what surah you have?
Surah Alaq.
Yeah, 6 it should be. Got it? Okay. So now I want to take it a little higher, and now I want to say, Wallahi, I swear by Allah. Wallahi, I just tossed in there, right? Wallahi, inna Ahmed la yadkhul. Or, inna Ahmed yadkhul. I swear by Allah. I actually said, I swear. Wallahi, indeed Ahmed came in. Now I said, Wallahi, so now you're really not supposed to doubt me. Right? The element of doubt rationally, I'm talking rationally here, is now supposed to be almost 100% cast out the door. But the moment I say, Inna Ahmed la yadkhul, rationally there's no way you could deny that sentence. No way you could challenge that sentence. Because that structure of inna and lam is used in the Arabic language to show that what is being said is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. So, kalla innal insana la yabgha means, okay, there's no rational discussion, there's no debate here. This is an ayah that you don't debate. The nature of the human being is to be transgressive. The nature of the human being is to go past limits. The nature of the human being is almost not even to observe limits. That doesn't mean that you might have exceptions, human beings that do observe limits. No, but the general rule is that the insan as a whole gravitates towards tughyan, transgressing rules, and not wanting laws. So this is the introduction of the Prophet to the nature of the human being. And he's introduced by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the nature of the human being with the strongest language possible, in the strongest structure possible in the Arabic language. So this is a fact that Allah Ta'ala is telling. This is a fact, O Prophet. You're dealing with people that their first nature, their basic instinct is tughyan. How does that manifest itself? How does that happen, Ya Rab? If the basic nature is like that, what does that look like? Ar-ra'ahu staghna. Well, the problem is the human being sees themselves as independent. Independent. Istighna is independent. What do your translations say? What is
Free from
free from?
want.
Free of need.
Free of needs, self-sufficient, yani, independent. You don't need anything. I'm good. Right? I have everything. I've got my money, got my house, got my credit cards, my iPhone, my air conditioning. I'm good. You know, my takeout, I'm all right. You know, this is the point. He created you from the Alaq. He's most generous to you. He taught you everything you know. And then how dare you assume you're independent? How dare you not adopt a posture of dependency? You see, kalla. See, this is why kalla is used. Despite this, this is what happens. So this pattern of istighna, of independence, is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a problem with. This is the first problem. Notice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understand the context now, really, because the Prophet ﷺ is in Mecca. There's 365 idols that are in the Kaaba. The mushrikeen, they're going around the Kaaba making tawaf with no clothes on. You know this was a pattern. There's some of them burying their daughters alive. All of these social ills, gambling and riba, and women being inherited into some crazy marriage. All these things going on, and Allah Ta'ala is saying, my problem with the human being, before I get into shirk, before I get into all these other things, is their mindset that they assume they're independent. This is the root, the asl of all these other problems, this independence. And it is one of the main markers of modernity. It is one of the main markers of the period we live in. And it is a flagship marker of Americans. It is. We are so independent. We think we are. The moment the water shut off and we get a little hot, then we really reassess that. Ar-ra'ahu istaghna, they see themselves as independent. Inna ila rabbika ar-ruj'a. Now notice when you see inna, now what comes to mind? What does that tell you about that sentence?
Surely.
Allah Ta'ala is upgrading the level of truth, certainty. Inna. Inna ila rabbika ar-ruj'a. Now this is another interesting verse because the word ruj'a means what? Return. Now you're going back, okay? It is a mark of the modern period that we believe from the Enlightenment, that we believe in the doctrine of what? It begins with a P. Progress. Progress. The modern condition and the Western condition is a condition of the belief in progress. The idea that tomorrow is always better than yesterday. The idea that we always get better. The idea that our living condition has to improve. That in medical research and technological research, we'll always get better and we'll become better human beings. And the further we are from religion and morality, the better we become. The idea, the doctrine of progress is what fuels the modern condition. The idea that you just infinitely sort of progress into certain levels of improvement and perfection. But this falls right in the face of that. Inna ila rabbika ar-ruj'a. You're not progressing. There is a cycle here. You're going back. There is a return. You have an origin. You've got a trajectory, and you're going back to that origin. You have a divine maker. He sent you out for a moment, and you're going back like a boomerang. You're returning. It's part of the education. Understanding that you are not just sort of, because the idea, if you think you're just progressing, then the point of sort of progressing without a final destination and a final ending point is pointless. And so life to you sort of loses its meaning, and you try to construct your own meaning. But the idea that there is an asl, there is a point of return, means that you have an end goal. You have a destination. And you better make it your business to be trying to reach that destination. And the fact that you will reach it is contained in the inna. Inna ila rabbika ar-ruj'a. The return with capital T. Okay? And a capital R. Like Hegel's, what is the March of History with a capital H? This is the capital R, return, yes.
So this verse, the verse switches to like you, rabbika, right? In the
Right.
previous one, I guess I kind of had a question on iksiraha. Like, I guess, I don't know, I'm a little bit confused as to
Ar-ra'ahu, he's talking about the insan, the human being.
Himself.
Yeah, the human being itself, right? As a body, right? That's the problem with him, humanity. Right? Ar-ra'ahu. Remember, in the Arabic language, the masculine pronoun him has two functions. One is that it refers to one male, but the other function is that it refers to a group, irregardless of gender. Right? So when you want to talk about a group in Arabic, you just use the masculine pronoun. Ar-ra'ahu, right? Humanity as a whole sees itself as istighna, or istaghna, which is istighna. So this is a commentary about the human being, not very positive. The human being suffers from the illness of transgression. They see themselves as independent, but the reality is they are dependent. They're coming back. Yes?
Just before we move on from this topic about the nature of the human being, I don't know if this is within the scope of the class, but if the problem is in the nature of the human being, then isn't this sort of couldn't this be read as an indictment of the creation of the human being, right? Like, why would God create us as transgressive and then be angry at us for our transgression?
Well, that comes a lot later in the Quran. It comes later. The simple answer to your question is that Allah Ta'ala not inaugurating. What is it when you enter a fraternity or initiating? They're initiating the Prophet ﷺ into the team. It's the team of the Super Bowl. They're called the prophets, the Anbiya wal Mursaleen. And so, in part of this team of prophetic superheroes, he's saying the first thing is to diagnose to diagnose the problem of the patient. So here's what the patient's problem is. Right? Don't talk about the solution. Here's what the problem is, because that's the whole reason why you're a prophet in the first place. It's because these people have problems. So he's focusing on the problem first, and then he'll talk about the solution and how that fits into the grand scheme of why he created us in the first place. Okay. So now a little time passes, and that's it for the ayah and the Prophet ﷺ. He goes and he starts to worship in front of the Kaaba and everything. Yes.
What's the amount of time between when the first 5 came and
We don't know.
Okay.
We don't know. And there's this guy whose name is Abu Lahab. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Right. So there's this guy Abu Lahab who is like the Fir'aun of the Prophet ﷺ. Right. So there's Musa and Fir'aun. There's Ibrahim and Nimrod. Right. So there's Abu Lahab and the Prophet ﷺ. Actually, with Musa, it was Fir'aun and what was the other guy? Haman, I think. Similarly with the Prophet, it's actually two. Abu Lahab is mentioned here, and the next surah we'll do is Walid ibn Mughira, who's his partner. Anyway, Abu Lahab, he tells his partners, he tells his tribe, he's tired of the Prophet ﷺ doing this prayer business at the Kaaba. He said, next time I see the Prophet ﷺ putting his head down, I'm going to take my foot, put it on his neck, and smash his face into the soil. I swear I'll do it, he says. And so, while the Prophet is praying, he used to do things to the Prophet and harass the Prophet ﷺ to stop him from praying. That would interrupt the Prophet's prayer. He used to do it every single day, all the time. And then one day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala got proverbially tired of it. We don't use that language with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he revealed this part of the verse. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. You see this knucklehead over here that's preventing you who's yanha, who's forbidding people from praying? You see this? It's very interesting. Allah Ta'ala says, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي. You see the one who. Doesn't even give him a name, doesn't give him his identity is his amal, his action. Now this is very important. When we dislike people, when we have problems with people, we have to disassociate the person from the action. The Quranic way is not to hate people for who they are. You hate people because of what they do. I don't have a problem with George Bush. I have a problem with people killing people. I don't have a problem with X person. I have a problem with surveillance. I don't have a problem with this person. I have a problem with stealing. I don't have a problem with this person. I have a problem with backbiting and fitna and lying and gossip. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. The name is not important. The identity is not important. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not judge us based upon our individual identities, our names and our CVs, and who we know. He judges us by our amal. So this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directing the Prophet's perception towards. You see the person who does this, I don't care that his name is Abu Lahab or Abu whatever. It's the yanha that's the problem. It's the shunning, the forbidding that's the problem. The act that he's doing. So actually the first step in conflict resolution in the modern sense is to learn to start talking about what the problem is and stop talking about the person. That's the first step. There's a great book you should read called Getting to Yes. First step, excellent, brilliant book. First step in conflict, separate the problem from the person and start saying, I don't like this behavior. Stop saying, I don't like you. Right? Because if you can't disassociate those two from each other, eventually you'll associate the problem with the person. And then that's when people start hating people. But as Ummat Muhammad, we have to be on the Quranic way. Our focus has to be actions. Because at the end of the day, ar-ruj'a, we're going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the affair, actions. And so our assessment of good and bad, of justice and injustice, of right and wrong, has to be action-based, not personality-based, not tribe-based, not nationality-based, etc. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. You see this person over here who's yanha? Assalamu alaikum. Yeah.
How do we square that with elsewhere in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally says, "Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab."
Now that's coming later. All right, good. It's good to see you here, by the way. Nice to see Colombia represented. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. You see this person who does yanha, who push. How do they translate yanha? Yanha is an interesting word. Prevents. What else? Forbids. Even better. Nahi is to forbid. Almost a good word in English is proscribe. Treat something like it's haram. That's yanha. Okay? So the Prophet's worshiping, and this guy is yanha, saying you have the audacity to worship here is forbidden. That's what he's doing. He's acting like worship is forbidden. He's taking something halal and making it. There you go. Yanha, and what's he yanha? Abdan. Abdan. This is the greatest praise of the Prophet ﷺ, the highest title that a person in the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ can achieve, to be an abd. The highest level is to be low. What elevates you, what raises you, is humbleness, lowliness. Abdan, a servant. Either Salah, when he prays. You see this, like of all people, he makes it forbidden for an abd to pray. You're an abd, that's your job. I created you to pray. Now this is interesting language, an interesting style in the Quran, where the Prophet ﷺ Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the Prophet, and he's telling, he's criticizing, he's taking up for the Prophet, he's criticizing a behavior of someone else who's opposing the Prophet, and then as he's addressing the Prophet, he's saying, do you see the one who forbids the servant? Very interesting. He didn't say, do you see the one who forbids you from praying? He didn't say, did you see the one who forbids the messenger from praying? Very ambiguous, but he's talking directly to the Prophet ﷺ. Abdan idha salla. Ara'ayta in kana ala al-huda. What about, what would happen if he was actually on guidance? You think he would actually do that? Ara'ayta in kana ala al-huda. Aw amara bit-taqwa. Or if he decided to command people in accordance with what was with taqwa, or in accordance with God-fearing actions. Do you see that he does that? Do you see he's on huda? Do you see that he commands people to taqwa? Ara'ayta in kadhaba wa tawalla. Or do you see that he kadhaba, refuses, denies the truth, wa tawalla, and turns his back on something. Right? Tawalla. Walla is an interesting word because it comes from the word wali. Waliya. Wali and waliya means to govern, which is to turn your chest to something in order to care for it. Right? But tawalla is, so waliya is to do a 180, right? To face something, to do a 180. Tawalla is to do, a complete turnaround. You just turn yourself around, okay? Turn your back to something. Alam ya'lam bi anna Allah yara. Now here's the introduction of Allah. Doesn't he know, alam ya'lam? Doesn't this guy know, this guy Abu Lahab, doesn't he know anna Allah yara, that Allah sees him? It's very powerful. Now the Prophet is introduced, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the attribute, to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees everything. And the fact that it should be ingrained in the conscience that God sees you. And Allah ta'ala teaches him that by introducing the mistake of Abu Lahab. They asked Prophet Jesus, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, he said, how did you get such good character? He said, I saw the bad things other people did and I just stayed away from it. You learn from other people's mistakes. And that is what's being pointed out here. Doesn't he know that Allah yara, sees him? If he knew that Allah saw him, he wouldn't do that, is the point. And what's the response? Doesn't he know that Allah sees him? What's the next word? Kalla. No, he doesn't. Doesn't he know that Allah sees him? Kalla. He doesn't. Kalla. لَإِن لَمْ يَنْتَهِ. If he doesn't stop, yani he's telling, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى. Do you see the one who forbids you from stopping? If he doesn't yadha, if he doesn't stop his actions, if he doesn't forbid himself from doing that action, لَنَسْفَعًا بِالنَّاسِيَةِ. إِن لَمْ يَنْتَهِ. If he doesn't do it, la. That la there means swear. Now it doesn't appear with inna, but that's the thing about la. Sometimes that la appears with inna and sometimes it doesn't. When it appears with inna, like we mentioned earlier in the Quran, it's the highest level of truth and certainty. When it doesn't appear with inna, when it just is a la by itself, it means I swear. Okay? It means I swear, but a lower level. If he doesn't stop himself, لَنَسْفَعًا بِالنَّاسِيَةِ. I swear we will nasfa'a. So nasfa'a comes from the words safa'a. Safa'a means, the best word in English I can use for nasfa'a. I don't know how proper the translators are, but I'll give it to you. The way it really is. Snatch you up. Snatch you up. Snatch you up. Literally. You heard of sometimes in movies. My parents, my mom, boy, I'll snatch you. My father used to say, snatch you, take you like this. Grab you by your chest and come here. What's wrong with you? Your child act like your little boy act up in the side. Boy, come here. Snatch you. Safa. It also means to hit in the face. It also means to hit in the face. Boy, come here. What's that video game? Get over here. Mortal Kombat. Get over here. Come here. Like this. Right? I'm sorry. You have to keep it real. This is the Quran. This is what Allah subhanahu. I swear, if he doesn't do that, la nasfa. Snatch him up. Come here. What's wrong with you? Jack him up, as they say in the streets. La nasfa, and I swear I'll do it. Where though, Ya Rab? You'll do it, but you could do it in certain ways, Yani. When you snatch somebody up, when you grab somebody, you can grab them here. My grandmother used to grab me here. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Boy, she grabbed that here. That was it. I sami'na wa ata'na. I hear and obey. You can do by the ear. Got long hair, you can do by the hair. How do you do it, Ya Rab? La nasfa'an bin nasiya. The nasiya has a couple of meanings. Nasiya is the hair that comes from I'm forgetting my English. Not the forelock. Thank you, forelock. Technical word. It's the hair that comes from the the forehead, yani. Hairline, thank you. The hairline. That hair that drops, that starts from here and grows down, grab you like this. Come here. You know, painful. Nasiya also has another meaning. Nasiya means the frontal lobe here. Right? The frontal lobe. Right? And it's supposed to be the most honorable part of the head, which is the seat of intelligence, the seat, the front part of the face, which is the most respected part. The Prophet ﷺ made it haram, absolutely haram, to hit anybody in the face. He absolutely forbade to hit people, to smack people in the face. He made it forbidden to hit animals in the face. He made it forbidden to brand in the face. Absolutely haram. You have kids and they hit each other in the face, you should check them immediately. Don't tolerate that action. Very big action in the Quran. The only person that hits in the face is Allah. That's what he's saying here. I'll take you by your nasiya. Take you by the front of your head. It also means to smack the front of the face such that the front of the face is bruised. Right? To change the coloring of the face. Right? So it also means to scalp also. To scalp. You know, take the head, cut off. We'll take him by his nasiya. We'll snatch him by his nasiya. By this frontal part. Lanasfa, I swear I'll do it. Lanasfa'an bin nasiya. This nasiyatin kadhibatin khati'a. This nasiya that is a kadhiba, a lying frontal lobe, khati'a, and full of error. All day making errors. Now what's very interesting is that the word nasiya in this verse is used as a kinaya, as a metaphoric language for the face itself, for the person's face, and the face is a metaphor for the entire body. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is, this nasiya, this head, this face, this entire subject, this entire person that is kadhiba, full of lies, khati'ah, full of errors. I'll take him up. When this ayah came down, Abu Lahab heard the Prophet recite it. And Abu Lahab said, oh really? And he went to his tribe of people, his gathering, and he said, come on, let's go get God. Right? And he called his group, his boys, his club. And in the Arabic language, those that know Arabic, what's the word for a club in Arabic? Modern day Arabic. Nadi. What's the next verse? فَلْيَدْعُ نَادِيَ. Let him call his club. Let him get his club. فَلْيَدْعُ نَادِيَ. He wants to call his boys, let him call him. Let him call his club. Boys club, girls club, whatever club. Call them. Call your army. Nadia, Allah Ta'ala uses. Very interesting. He doesn't use jama'at. Right? He doesn't use qabila, his tribe. He doesn't use technical terms. He used the same word that Abu Lahab used. His Nadia, his clique, his gang. Right? Let him call his Nadia. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a most profound checkmate move, said, Sanad'u Zabaniya. You want to call your Nadia? You want to call your club? I'll call my club. Zabaniya, very interesting word in Arabic, comes from the word Zeban. Zeban means the group of people that always have your back. Zubana means the pinchers of the scorpion. The pinchers of the scorpion. Zeban also means a group of people that always not only have your back, but they come to your defense specifically. They're not offense. They come to your defense and your support. Zabaniya is the name, also from the same word, Zeban is the hoofs of the camel that it uses to defend itself and to trample on something, to fight back. It's the hoofs of the camel. Zabaniya are the name of an elite special force group of angels that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has signaled out for the defense of his prophets and messengers when they need it. They are, you ever seen that movie, The Avengers? They are the Avengers. Right? Zabaniya, the defenders. That's Zabaniya, the defenders. Right? He could have said فَلْيَدْعُ نَادِيَ سَنَدْبُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. Right? I'll call the malaika. But malaika doesn't like rhyme with Nadia. And malaika is general. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not calling the whole army. No, He's calling only us, the elite forces, special forces of the malaika. The ninjas. He's calling, and they are called zabani. Allah Ta'ala mentions them in another place in the Quran specifically. He mentions them in Surah Tahrim, where Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, Asta'idhu billah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, save yourselves and your family from the hellfire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةِ, its fuel are men, human beings and stones. عَلَيْهَا مَلَائِكَةٌ غِلَاظٌ شِدَادٌ. There. Over the hellfire, in charge of the hellfire, are these special malaika that are elite. غِلَاظٌ, they're muscular. شِدَادٌ, they're strong and stern and severe. لَا يَعْصُونَ اللَّهَ مَا أَمَرَهُمْ, they never disobey Allah when He commands them to do something. وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ, and whenever He commands them, they follow through. They're mentioned in this and in the Tafsir, it's called, their name is Zabaniya. That's the name of their group. So Allah Ta'ala is saying, let him call his club. We'll call Zabaniya. Get the angels of the hellfire. Ibn Abbas in his Tafsir, he said, if Abu Lahab at that time were to stand up in opposition, the Zabaniya angels would have descended on him, and they would have taken him piece by piece to the hellfire. Not in whole. They would have taken arms, legs, everything, piece by piece, bit by bit. سَنَدْعُ الزَّبَانِيَ, we'll call Zabaniya Kalla. Right? But no, we don't need to do that. I'm not going to go there, as we say. Kalla, I'm not going to do it. I can do it, I'm able to do it, I'm not going to go there. Kalla. Instead, O Muhammad, because we're not, the Quranic way is not an aggressive way. The Quranic way is not an antagonistic way. The Quranic way is not a violent way. We could do that. We could all just get up and have a Western shootout. But, you call me a name, I could call you a name. You hit me back, I hit you back. Right? You abuse me, I abuse you, tit for tat. Eye for an eye. We could do that, but that's not the Quranic way. I could hurt you, but that's not what my teacher taught me to do. I could do that, but that's not what my teacher did. That's the way we have to be as a community. Right? Like Khalid, not Khalid ibn Walid. I forgot. Subhanallah. What was the Omar Mukhtar? Was it? Yeah. When he's responding about how they treat the women, and he has an opportunity to exact revenge on a group of people. And his soldiers are like, why don't you get revenge on them? This is what they do to our women, do that to their women. He said, that's not what our teaching would do. We could do it. That's not who we are. We operate at a higher level. Kalla. This is all included in kalla. La tuti'hu. Instead, don't fight him. Just don't obey him. Don't listen to him. Don't talk bad about him. La tuti'hu. Don't obey him. Instead, what do? Wasjud, waqtarib. Now this part of the verse has two meanings to it. One is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the Prophet, and He's telling him, don't obey him, just usjud. Instead, prostrate. Continue. I continue to prostrate. He says He's going to put His foot on the back of your neck and push your face in. Prostrate. Protest. Go to the doorstep, challenge. Wasjud waqtarib. Waqtarib, this is from the word qurba. This is another concept you should know. Qurba. Write it down. Qurba. It's introduced in the word iqtarib. Qurba. Qaf, ra, ba, ta marbuta. Qurbah. Qurba. Qurba means, anybody? Huh? Yes, drawing near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qurba, it's a concept. Every type of ibadah is qurba, coming near. Comes from the word qareeb, to draw near. Waqtarib means take yourself, grab yourself and bring yourself near. That's waqtarib. Make yourself near. I saw one time, I think I saw a translation, it was in draw nigh. SubhanAllah, old English. Draw nigh. Bring yourself in. Prostrate, bring yourself in. Yani, when you prostrate, when you make sajda, it is the position in the prayer where you are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One. So one way to read this verse is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the Prophet two instructions, two pills to take. Make sajda, yani continue your prostration, and in the process, draw yourself near. Just bring your, don't get caught up in this person over, this fool over here. Focus, maintain focus. Don't get distracted. Maintain focus on reaching Allah. And in the words of Sheikh Amin, our dear Sheikh and teacher, rahimahullah, subhanAllah, it's the first time I said rahimahullah with his name. He said, when you are dealing with shaitan, you have two options. And he gave an analogy of somebody who's going to somebody's house. You go to visit somebody's house to visit the owner of the house. Yani, you're trying to get close to Allah. You go to trying to meet the owner, and there's a gate, there's a barrier. And all of a sudden the dog comes out and starts barking at you. He said you have two options. One, you could lower yourself and just start barking back at the dog. And trying to communicate with the dog. And trying to reason with the dog. And trying to reach some type of agreement with the dog. So that the dog will not bother you as long as you go see the master. He said you could try to do that. He said, but the other way is just to call the master of the house and tell him to come get his dog. He said, when you do qurbah, when you focus on Allah, you're calling the master. So just draw near to me, I'll take care of my dog. Right? Just come close to me. When you have problems with people, don't worry about the dog. Worry about the master. This is the Quranic way. Okay? See, every day we get caught up in all kinds of figures and forms, and we think that people are often in control of their own actions. But because we think people are in control of their own actions, we get caught up in those actions. And we forget that there's an owner of those actions. So if you want change, you've got to call the one who's in charge of the change. Wasjud, put your head down, waqtarib, and come to me. I'll deal with the dog. That's Tafsir 1. Tafsir 2 is a little different. Yes?
So I feel like some people, when they hear things like that, they might think, so I'm not accountable for my own actions.
I'll come to that. Yes. Let me hear your question.
That was it.
Yeah. No, they are, but remember, they are accountable. But this is not from their perspective. This is from your perspective, or from the Prophet's perspective. So Allah Ta'ala is telling the Prophet, just come to me, I'll deal with him. Right? He's wrong in what he does.
So if you have like an argument with someone, instead of trying to work out with them, just,
Well,
where do you draw the line between what you do and what someone can pray?
Right. Well, the Prophet's going to come into different encounters with different people. In this particular case, there was no negotiations that were possible. There was no type of reconciling. We're talking about the worst. He was the Prophet's staunch enemy, Abu Lahab. So when you're dealing with somebody who has put themselves on their own in a position where they are opposing you in every single thing, and they are trying to prevent you from doing what is right, and it's clear that what you're doing is what's right, and they are opposed to that, and they're using all of their energy to deter you from that, in that case, you don't deal with them. You deal with Allah to deal with them. Now, there are other cases where there's other options and other techniques, and those will be seen a little later, inshallah. Okay. Now, the other tafsir is different. In the other one, Allah Ta'ala is saying, Kalla, I'm not going to do that. Right? This is not our way. La tuti'hu, don't obey him, Muhammad. Wasjud, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wasjud, instead you prostrate, and then the last part of that, the last part of the ayah about waqtarib, draw near, is an address not to the Prophet, it's an address, it's a khitab to Abu Lahab, where Allah Ta'ala is challenging him. Prophet, you prostrate, come near to him. Just come close to him. Iqtarab ilayh, challenging. You want to step on his face? Come close to him. Take one step. I'll call Zabaniya so quick. Muhammad, you prostrate? Iqtarab, go close to him. I dare you. Draw near. The challenge. Okay? Both are correct in the tafsir literature. You understand it? Both are correct. So this is the introductory surah. Any questions before we move to Muddathir? We're gonna move. Yeah.
So I was just wondering if there is any sequence of events historically before and after these ayah in regards to Abu Lahab and his relationship with the Prophet.
Yeah, that's found best in the seerah literature, though. Yeah. It would be interesting to do a tafsir. Well, actually, we know from the scholars of the past have already done it. Look for because in Bukhari, for example, has a major chapter on it. But this is not obviously the first encounter that the Prophet had. This surah, as I understand it, is dealing with a culmination of several encounters that the Prophet had, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But several encounters, but all the same type of event. Encounters the Prophet had with Abu Lahab while he was trying to pray. And then there are different encounters at different times as well. Up until the Battle of Badr, then I think after Badr it was done. Okay. Alhamdulillah, we still have a little time to just start Surah Muddathir. Muddathir. What's the number? 74. I think it's 74. Huh? 74. Inshallah, we will go till about 8:15, inshallah, so 20 minutes, inshallah. So now, afterwards, the Prophet ﷺ, he used to wrap himself up in a cloak sometimes, and according to some narrations, it was like a velvet cloak sometimes, and he would contemplate, he would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then revealed to him, "O you who's wrapped up, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, O one that's wrapped up." Now this has a few meanings to it, it's very interesting, because muddathir comes from the same word which means to be wrapped up. In English we say wrapped up into something, preoccupied. Okay? The idea is the Prophet ﷺ would be in a mode of tafakkur, contemplation about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, O one who's wrapped up in the thought of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, Ya ayyuhal muddathir is the one who wraps themselves up in their own, who sleeps at night with clothes, who sleeps at night with their clothes on, doesn't like change into pajamas or something. So the Prophet ﷺ used to just lie down, and he would go to sleep at night. So Ya ayyuhal muddathir is the one who sleeps at night with their clothes on also. There's a couple of meanings to this, and it's found in the Tafsir literature. All of them are correct, in different levels of understanding. So when you recite it, you can ponder on the deeper meanings of each one. But the one about him lying down is preferred a little bit because of the next verse. Qum fa'andir, stand up, rise, and warn people. Fa'andir. Now this is the first command the Prophet ﷺ had of proclamation, right? Announcing the message. Before, the first level was that he was supposed to just internalize the wahi, the revelation, and just practice it himself. Now, with this particular verse, he's being instructed to command. Rise up. Very interesting. Kum may mean to stand up, literally to stand up. Kum may also mean rise up in your community. Not literally stand, but take a stand. Take a stand. Kum, take a stand. It's time now to stop sitting. All right, Muhammad Ali, I love this quote. He said, "You people sit too much. I teach my dog to sit." Muhammad Ali said, he said, "You people sit down too much. You need to stand, yani. Stand up. Kum, stand. Yani, your qawm, your qawm means the people that stand up. That's exactly what qawm means. All right, we're not called people of sitting. Qum fa'andir. Stand up, and immediately when you stand up, andir, proclaim, announce, warn. Warn people. So first command that the Prophet had, remember in Iqra there was no command other than prostrate and draw near. That was the command. Now, Allah Ta'ala wants him to go public. Qum, go public, fa'andir, and announce and warn people now. Start warning people. Second command, wa rabbaka, and your teacher, your Lord, fakabbir, glorify. From this verse here, we learn that the Prophet ﷺ was commanded to say the Allahu Akbar in the prayer. The opening Allahu Akbar, the dalil, the proof for that is this verse right here. That's why we say Allahu Akbar in the prayer. That's the meaning of, that was the first meaning of this verse. وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ. Do takbir for your Lord. Glorify your Lord, i.e. your teacher, your educator. Teacher with a capital T. So glorify your Lord, because the Prophet was praying, but before he was not saying Allahu Akbar. He was not enough. This is why, interestingly enough, subhanAllah, the Allahu Akbar has to be allowed. You know, you can't say for the opening Allahu Akbar when you start your prayer. You know your prayer is not valid if you don't say verbally Allahu Akbar. Do you know that? Your prayer, you haven't started praying yet. Your prayer is not valid, not sahih, not accepted without you saying Allahu, even if you're praying a silent prayer. The Allahu Akbar has to be verbalized, and it has to be at least so that you can hear yourself. Allahu Akbar. It's in the conjunction, in the context of this verse, which is to anzir, announce, publicize what you do. The prayer has to be announced. Even if you're praying by yourself, you announce it to yourself. Allahu Akbar. And then you can pray silent. وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ. And then the next verse, which is really interesting. وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. Thiyabaka means your clothes, your garments. فَطَهِّرْ. Purify them. Was the Prophet praying in dirty clothes? Thiyabaka فَطَهِّرْ comes from there was, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was an old ta'bir, an old expression. The Arabs, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, if they saw a man who was engaged in like immoral activities and unethical activities and doing treachery and not trustworthy, they'd say, خَبَثَ ثِيَابَهُ. His clothes are dirty. His clothes are dirty. Don't hang around him. His clothes are dirty. He needs to wash his clothes. It means his actions are not moral. Allah Ta'ala is saying, purify your garments. Make sure your actions are correct. It does not mean that the Prophet was doing something bad. It means make sure as part of this, your command is continue keeping your garments clean. That's the command. I.e., continue with your akhlaq, with your good habits, your amal salih, your righteous deeds. Keep your clothes clean. SubhanAllah, Sheikh Amin used to say that, he told me that in the Ottoman times, the Ottoman scholars, they used to have a phrase from this verse that was born from this verse. And the phrase is, İmamın sarası beyazdır. Anybody speak Turkish in here? What did I just say?
Sorry?
What did I just say? Sarası. İmamın sarası beyazdır. Sarası. Sarası. Who speaks Turkish? Ha. Yes, his wrap is beyazdır. Exactly. The Imam's turban is white. What does that mean? The smallest piece of dirt that's on it, it shows up, magnified. The smallest mistake the scholar does is blown up. It's shown to everybody. Keep your clothes clean. He says the alim has to wear a white turban. Why? To remind himself that the mistakes that he does are public, major. The smallest spot can be seen by everybody. Right? If you have a black turban, if you have a spot on it, nobody's going to see it. But wear white and start getting brown spots and yellow spots and brown. Everybody will say, maybe you should wash that. Like, maybe you should purify yourself. Right? This is why he told me wear white. This is why I have a white taqiyya all the time. This is why. Rarely will you see me with a black one or a dark one. Unless if this one's being washed, I have a different color. But this is the meaning. That be ethical. Why? Because somebody in your position, when they make little mistakes, they become grand problems for communities. Thiyabaka fatahir. Keep your clothes white.
I was going to say, in terms of if you're bringing it present,
right,
that if you are in a position where you're teaching, leading, guiding, that your behavior, your posture, your demeanor is going to speak volumes.
You're under the microscope.
So, the littlest thing you do becomes this grand thing
That's right.
that a lot of people will speak of or speak
right.
about.
That's
So,
right.
and that you don't get caught up in, as you're being that leader or speaking for your cause, that you get so caught up in that you forget what
You forget the
purpose is.
you forget the ruja. You forget you're returning, all right? And a community behind you is supposed to return. So where are you taking them to?
Right.
That little building, or are you taking them to Allah? Right? Big difference. This is very, very, very important. A very important ayah here. That you keep your clothes clean. ثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِرْ. Another meaning, another layer. Yes, there's another layer of meaning. The Quran is deep. Another layer of meaning is that the Prophet ﷺ didn't have a lot, and so he would get used clothes, right? What we would call used clothes, or consignment, hand-me-downs, or when you go to a store, it's a consignment shop, right? Or hand-me-downs, right? So he would get it. So he wouldn't know where the origin was of the clothes, but he might buy garments that belonged to somebody else who did a sin in that garment, right? Who stole or oppressed somebody. So Allah Ta'ala is telling him, wash those clothes. From this comes into our tradition the adab that when you make a big sin, if you commit a sin, that not only are you supposed to make wudu and pray tawbah, but you take your clothes off and you wash them. Right? Imam Ghazali writes about this in his book Minhaj al-Abidin ila al-Jannah, that if a Muslim commits a kaba'ir, a major sin, part of the tawbah is that you don't just pray tawbah in the same clothes that you had on when you disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Especially if you make a kaba'ir, a major sin, you yourself take a ghusl. You yourself take a shower. And you wash those clothes and you repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in new clothes. Right? The idea being you're going to show new character, new conduct, new path. Okay? So thiyabaka fatahir, clean those clothes that you're wearing, because you cannot wear anything that used to be belonging to some, or whose last owner did something that was immoral, and those clothes have never been purified. Thiyabaka fatahir. And also, of course, it means keep your clothes clean in the sense of ritual purity, such that before you enter the prayer, there can be no filth on your clothes and things of that nature. From a fiqh point of view, yes, it comes out of this verse as well. ثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِرْ وَالرُّجَزَ فَهْجُرْ. Verse 4. وَالرُّجَزَ فَهْجُرْ. And all rujas, all vices, fahjur, shun them. Rujas here means two things. One, it means idols, directly, idols. All idols, shun them all. The Quraysh, the mushrikun, the polytheists of Mecca, they had a habit where every time they would go inside the Kaaba, there would be two big idols in the Kaaba, and when they entered the Kaaba, out of respect for those idols, the proper etiquette was that they would walk in and they would touch the face of each idol, right? And so that was a social practice at the time. So this verse here, وَالرُّجْزَ فَهْجُرْ, stopped the Prophet from doing that. After that, he never did it again. Right? And so that was to make an outward display of rejecting the respect for those idols. Rujus, and there's another recitation of this verse where it's recited rijis, not rujus. Rujus means idol. Rijis with a kasra under the ra means sins. Okay? Rujus fahjur or rijis fahjur in another qira'ah. Both are correct. So in the first recitation, shun all idols in all way. In the second, rijis, it's shun sinning in all of its capacity. That's your public stance. You and your community have to be a community that shuns idolatry and shuns vices and immoral behavior. Right? Your focus has to be behavior. You see the one who does this bad behavior. وَلَا تَمْنُن تَسْتَكْثِرْ. La tamnun. Don't give something as a gift to somebody else. Don't make an offering. Right? Don't give something, tastakthir, seeking that, with the hopes that you'll get something back. Don't give a gift thinking that maybe next time they'll give me a gift. Don't give this message hoping for profit, hoping for money. Don't convey guidance to people hoping that they will somehow benefit you. Right? Why? Because in the first surah that you just received, I identified myself to you as Al-Akram, the most generous. Here is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the Prophet to take on a characteristic that Allah ta'ala has. Generosity without any expectation of anything in return. La tamnun, don't give anything tastaktif, seeking generosity. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَرَبُّكَ al-Akram, Allah ta'ala calls himself an Akram, the most generous person. The most generous person, or the one that's most generous, is the one that when they give something, they don't need anything in return, and they don't expect anything in return. That's ultimate generosity. Another layer of meaning is when you, la tamnun means to offer something, to give, to offer. When you offer something, meaning when you offer your worship, your ibadah, your prayer, when you offer it to Allah, la tasdik, don't seek any reward. Just do it because you're a servant of Allah. Pray because that's your job. Fast because that's your job. Without seeking any reward. Allah Ta'ala commanded the Prophet to have the highest level of ikhlas, of sincerity. Now in our tradition, there are levels of ikhlas, level of sincerity. The first level is to worship Allah hoping for some reward. You give something, you want to get something. It's very entrepreneurial-like. Transaction-based. I pray, I want my blessings. Really. But you know, out of His generosity, Allah Ta'ala is Al-Akram, it's okay, He accepts it. It's okay with Allah. And He still calls it sincerity, ikhlas. Subhanallah. Pray, I want my barakah. Most people operate at that level. The second level is different. The second level of ikhlas is to offer ibadah, offer worship, pray, but you're praying because you're hoping for Jannah and you're fearing the hellfire. So it's a combination. It's not just because you want something. It's because you want one thing and you don't want the other. So there's a fear factor that is built into that. That's the second level. Okay? Still transaction based. There's a mu'amala there. There's a transaction that's there. I'm offering the prayer, but it's not a real offer because I want an acceptance and I want something back. Okay? That's the second level. But the third level is very different. The third level is to make an offering, to pray, to give, to perform an act of worship, not hoping for any reward, not fearing any punishment, only because you understand that He is Allah and you are a servant, and that's your job to worship Him. That is ikhlas tam, complete ikhlas. And that is the level that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is informing the Prophet to be at. He has to be the best. He has to show the highest standard. So la tamnun, don't offer something, tastakthir, hoping that you'll get something back. Don't be like that. Don't be like that in your worship. Don't be like that in your worldly, secular activities. If you give a gift, give it. Don't be like that. And so this is a very, very amazing ethical principle that's here. When you give as a community, as a family, as an individual, you give. And it comes from your heart. And your reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wali rabbika fasbir. We'll stop here. And when you warn people, when you pray in public, when you start shunning people's idols, you're going to encounter problems. You're going to cause, it's going to cause some people trauma. Some people are going to get mad. You're going to find yourself in a very difficult and precarious situation. So have sabr. Wali rabbika, in your Lord, fasbir. Yani fasbir li rabbika. Have sabr with your Lord, in your Lord, for your Lord. Have patience with your Lord. Okay, because aruja, you're going back to Him anyway. So you're not just progressing along some continuum that has no end. All right, so have sabr. From this verse comes a concept called sabr ind al-balaya. Patience in the face of adversity. Patience in the face of affliction. Patience in the face of stress, trial, turmoil. That's why when somebody dies, when you want to send your condolences, you say, have patience. Sounds weird. That's the Islamic way. Someone's going through difficulty, just have sabr. You're not being mean, right? That's the Islamic way, sabr. Remind them of sabr. That's the Quranic way. Right? People might not be ready to hear that sometimes. That's okay, that's where they are. But your job is to show them the Quranic way, to embody the Quranic way. Have sabr in your Lord. Why? Because everybody goes through something. Everybody's been through something. And Prophet, you're going to go through something. So start now from the beginning as you're cultivating a habit of prayer, as you're cultivating a habit of tahara, purity. Part of that, a main pillar of that, is sabr, patience.
Now, patience is absolutely, I hear that. But when there's like real problems that are going on and someone is just given, like a solution needs to be found, and people just say, oh, just have sabr, and then...
But sabr doesn't mean to sit down. Very good question. I see your point. This is not sabr. You could be trying to find a solution to the problem and still have sabr at the same time. So sabr, a lot of times we associate sabr with being passive.
Yeah.
That is our mistake. That is not the concept sabr. Sabr means that you understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is working things, is doing things. And sometimes Allah ta'ala works in His time, not our time. And our sabr means that you are actively, not passively, actively waiting for His time, for your way out in His time. But you are still required, or that person in that situation is still required to seek a way out. They're still required to take means. Yeah.
That's from like those old expressions I grew up with. Be patient with the process.
Yes, thank you. Mabruk. Thank you. Thank you. Be patient with the process. Barakallahu feek, Sister Khadija. Absolutely.
And he would ask me, he said,
absolutely.
Do you have faith? Yeah.
Patience with the I'm so happy because my grandmother used, I mean, not to age you, but my grandmother, no, I'm just saying, but my grandmother used to say, be patient with the process. The process is active, and it's like a bureaucracy. How long will it take to get my paycheck? This is my first day on the job. Well, it's got to go through approval and this, that. It may take 3 or 4 weeks. Well, can I have an advancement? No, I'm sorry, you have to be patient. So, yeah, you still have to show up to work. You don't just say, well, I'm not going to show up to work then. No, you still have to go to work. There's a process. So I'm very happy you mentioned that, because we have to get this out of our mind that patience, that sabr, means inaction. Right? It means passiveness. Not at all. On the contrary, it's very active. But what happens is, despite the action you're doing, sometimes you don't see the result until later. That's where you have to be patient. And that's where, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've heard the translation for sabr as a patient perseverance.
Perseverance, excellent. Which embodies that, excellent, yeah.
So in the translation that I'm reading, it says, and for the sake of your Lord, be patient, which the way you're saying is, no, be patient with your Lord, meaning you're waiting for your Lord to act.
Yeah, you're with in the sense, yeah, exactly. You're sabr, but you're with Allah. Why? Because Allah Ta'ala is with you as well. So that this concept we'll return to quite often, inshallah. The concept of ma'iyah, being with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's with us always, but sometimes we are not aware that we are with Him. Right? This is what Allah Ta'ala is saying. Doesn't He know that Allah sees him? Alam ya'lam bi anna Allah yara. Doesn't He know that Allah sees him? Okay, let's stop here. I need somebody or some people or a group of people next week, please, to remind me to give a short talk on the prostration for recitation. As at the end of the verse of the previous surah, there's a prostration for recitation. We want to highlight that, talk about that. So please write that down. Someone remind me, please, next week to talk about that. And then we'll continue with suratal Muddathir. Yes.
Will there be class next Friday?
Yes. Yes, there will be class next Friday, even though yes, the building will be open, I've checked. Yeah, so inshallah next Friday, 6:45 inshallah to 8:15. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
What's the...
Yeah, tomorrow for those that are, you can cut it off.